everything down, you can just take this opportunity to listen and engage with the very lovely speakers we've collected for you guys today. So I do want to start off by just saying welcome to everyone. Thank you for making the time, to attend. I hope you guys are excited about this, and I hope it'll be a very beneficial and informative session. My name is Tamron Sager. I'm the Vice Chairperson and Mentors Director for the Psyche Society, and I'm one of the coordinators of this event. If I'm not mistaken, one of my colleagues, Zandi, is with us somewhere in the participant.
Yes, I am, yeah.
Okay, cool. Zandi is our virtual projects director. So I'm going to be hosting the event, but most of it will be other people speaking. So don't worry, you won't have to listen to my voice for too long. So essentially, just to go over some of the basic rules. Please, keep yourself muted if you're not speaking. Cameras off, save all questions till the end, anything like that. If you can't hear, then please, let me know. But when I am sharing my screen, I won't be able to read the chat. So just unmute yourself to let me know if there's something wrong with the screen or if you can't hear something. So I will quickly start with the recording, this screen sharing. Can someone just let me know if you can see my screen? There should be a very bright yellow post-it note kind of looking thing.
We can see the screen.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, so again, welcome everyone to the Counselling Psychology session. Also, all of these slides will also be shared with you guys, so don't stress about that. So before I introduce our speakers, I'm just going to kind of go over what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to start with a general kind of overview of the honors applications, the different universities, their requirements, just so you guys have that info. Then we'll chat to you a bit more about counseling psychology, a bit more about the field. And then the exciting part that you guys are probably all here for is the part where we actually hand over to our speakers. So we're very thankful to have 4 different speakers today. We've got Prof. Guse. She's the head of the psychology department, which I think most of you guys know. She will be giving a professional perspective on counseling psychology. We also have Miss Anri Vandenberg, who is a counselor, who will be giving a kind of additional perspective on a pathway you could take if you don't get into honors, but you still want to do counseling, but she'll go more into that when she does speak. And then we also have 2 students who will be sharing, their own perspective as current honors students with you guys. So that's Cameron Johnson and Cayla Bergmann-Ally. And then we'll have a little bit of time at the end for you guys to ask any questions that you might have. Okay. So just a brief overview of the different universities and the requirements. I'm not going to read through everything. You can kind of look at the little pretty picture on the screen. And again, this will be shared with you guys after the session, so don't stress about writing everything down. But so obviously we have the University of Pretoria first. I think most of us are planning on applying to the University of Pretoria, considering we're already students. So honors applications have already opened. If you are struggling with applying for honors, there will be a session on the 17th of May at 6:30, hosted by one of the staff members in the psychology department. I apologize for the background noise. One of the members in the psychology department, just to take you guys through how to actually apply. So if anyone's struggling or just want to confirm that they've done it correctly, then tune in for that session. You can still sign up for it on the same link that you signed up for this session for. Okay, so that's the University of Pretoria. Then we also have WITS. They only open in a little bit, only in June. You can see some of the different modules they offer, as well as, what are their requirements. Then we also have UJ, also only open a little bit later in July. Their requirements, some of their modules. And then UCT, they've already opened some of their modules. I think it was a bit difficult to find the requirements, so you guys will kind of just need to search for that. Unfortunately, we weren't able to find them, but I'm sure it's listed somewhere. But yeah, so those are the 4 main universities that most students are interested in doing their honors application in. Okay, and then we also have a little section about financing options. So this South African bursaries website is a great place to look if you guys are interested in finding bursaries or scholarships that you can apply for. We have listed about 4 that are psychology specific. So you can always take a look at that, look at the requirements, see if you meet them, and check out the application deadlines, everything like that. Okay, now into the interesting stuff. So what is counseling psychology? It's essentially a specialty within the field that focuses on the counseling process, helping clients identify goals and solutions to their problems. So there's a beautiful little lovely explanation there for you guys to read if you're interested. And then also a bit of a breakdown of generally the studying that you need to do in order to become a counseling psychologist. So, your undergrad, an honors degree, and then a master's. Yeah. And then also just, again, these are loose numbers, guys. We're not, it might change depending on where you work, what kind of practice you work at, anything like that. But that's generally the salary of a counseling psychologist, as well as the working hours. So it's generally a 9-to-5 week. But if obviously you open your own practice, it's more flexible. And then we also have a career path with some of the different routes you can go in if you choose to become a counseling psychologist. Okay, and now for the actual exciting part, the presentations. So if I can just ask Prof. Guse, who will be speaking first. Got a beautiful picture of her as well as her qualifications and an email in case you guys are interested in reaching out, asking any further questions. But Prof. Guse will be speaking first. Prof. Guse, could you maybe just unmute yourself just so I can make sure?
Sure. Thank you so much, Tamrin. Do you want me to also put on my video? I know sometimes it's a problem with bandwidth, or should I just continue as is?
Honestly, I don't mind. I can't see anything, so if you're fine with it, that would be great. I think that's always helpful for students.
I'll do it a little bit so that you can just see that I am alive. I live, and even though you guys have been doing virtual online teaching for most of your academic career, so we are real people in the Department of Psychology. So yes, I'm going to use my video, but if anybody feels that it's a problem with bandwidth, let me know, and then I can just change it to audio only. Okay. Tamrin, also, when I had a discussion with your colleagues a bit earlier, they said that it's fine if we do a sort of an interview style, that I sort of I actually just want to have a discussion or a conversation rather than to bore people with slides. And I had a few questions that were put to me. Is it okay if I go ahead with that?
Yes. Would you like me to ask them to you and kind of do it like that? I do have the questions with me.
I have, okay, if you want to, maybe it just feels then more like an interview rather than me just reading all the things from here.
Okay, perfect. So essentially the first question that we kind of just want to know is, some of your background. What kind of pathway did you take? What did you study? How did you end up where you currently are?
Okay, I will speak to that, and later I would also just like to add to what you said in the beginning, but let me start and answer the question that you've got for me. Interestingly enough, I did not start out to become a counseling psychologist. Just to let you know, I've been registered now for about 32 years as a counseling psychologist, more or less. I don't always do the math, but I remember I got registered in 1989. I'm ancient, I know. So when I started my undergraduate studies, I actually wanted to become a journalist or a politician. But I always took psychology because I was interested in psychology together with my journalism subjects and my politics subjects. And then it went up to honors, and I decided to rather do psychology honors because I was interested in that. And then at the end of honors, I decided I really want to enter the profession of counseling psychology. And so one thing naturally led to the other. What is also important, I was always curious. I don't think I went into the field at that stage so much with a therapeutic focus as much as an interest in understanding the human condition and understanding human psychological makeup. I think that was really, really important for me. At that stage, the training in South Africa looked a bit different from what it is today. Students were trained together. The clinical and the counseling students were trained in one class, and then the differentiation came in afterwards, depending on where you did the internship. But I specifically chose counseling psychology as an internship because already at that stage, it was evident that counseling psychology has a focus on people's resources and strength, working with people experiencing life stresses, developmental difficulties, in addition to mild to moderate psychopathology. So the focus was less on mental distress and disorders towards working with people in becoming the best versions of themselves. That does include working with psychopathology and also with really difficult problems that people may have in their lives, but I really resonated with that focus on strengths and resources. So that was my route into entering the counseling psychology program. After my internship, which I did at a Center for Child and Adult Guidance. Oh, by the way, I did my studies at Northwest University, I forgot to say, which was Potch University in the past. So I come from that small university there in the Platteland, but I really enjoyed it. I did my internship in Pretoria, and then I was still very young. I did one year of study after the other, so I was about 25 when I registered as a psychologist, and then I entered full-time private practice from the beginning. The reason for that was that I had no other opportunity because I was living in a smaller town at that stage, just got married. So I decided to focus on what I was trained for, and that is to enter practice, to do psychotherapy, to assist people in dealing with life the best I could. Now, I think you can imagine it's quite daunting when you're young to start with that, but I thoroughly enjoyed my 15 years of practice. I worked across the spectrum, seeing children from about 3 years old up to people to 70, 75 years old. And that was really a humbling experience. It clearly learned me a lot about people. I realized that we all are hurting, but if we have compassion, we can support people to get to the other side and grow in their journey. So that's sort of a mouthful, how I started studying and more or less what I did as a counseling psychologist, but you can maybe ask if you want me to elaborate on anything in that case.
I do think if you could maybe elaborate on what a sort of typical day in the life of a counseling psychologist, what that's like. I'm sure it's very different day to day, but
Yeah.
What kind of
yes. I think what is also important is to think of the counseling psychology context. And that is what I love about counseling psychology, is that you've got different things that you can do. If we focus on practicing as a psychologist, as a counseling psychologist, most psychologists, clinical also, but most counseling psychologists seem to work in private practice in South Africa at the moment. I'll speak more to that when we speak about the pros and the cons. So a typical day is actually up to you. But of course, if you don't work, you don't get paid. So you need to distribute your work hours and decide how many hours you'd like to work, what is feasible. But it is actually recommended, or in my view, I think it is ideal to work 6 to 7 hours or see clients 6 to 7 hours. If you're starting out, you would be maybe seeing fewer clients because your practice may not be that busy. But let's say you're an established counseling psychologist, you will be working, seeing clients for 6 to 7 hours of the day. The other hours you would be working marking assessments, because part of your work will be to do psychological assessments. You will be writing reports. You have to read up on the latest research related to possibly a client's situation. So it's a balance of doing therapy, doing psychological assessments, and then also writing reports. The fortunate thing is it can be flexible. But remember that we often have to accommodate our clients. They are working, so maybe you'll find that you start working later in the morning, but you'll go on to 7 or 8 o'clock because you see clients late in the afternoon. But that is something that you can decide for yourself. So that is a typical day. You'll be doing psychotherapy with children, adolescents, adults. You'll be doing psychological assessments. You'll be writing reports. You'll be reading.
Okay, perfect. And then you did mention it, but what would you say are some of the pros of the field, but also some of the cons, based on your personal experience or the experience of your colleagues?
The pros are definitely, I think, outweighing the cons, is that you can have different career trajectories. As I said when I started out, my career trajectory was 15 years in practice, and now I'm 16 years in academia. So you, depending on who you are and what you want to do with your life, you can always go into different avenues of interest. And you, as you develop as a psychologist and have a specific therapeutic focus, you may find that you choose to work with specific populations. That would be, some of us like to work with children more. So you work, the focus of your practice would be children or adolescents or adults. So that autonomy, I think, for me, is a huge pro. Choosing the focus of your work. Also, if you're in practice, choosing the hours that you want to work, choosing the time limits in terms of how many hours you want to work, even choosing where you want to start out your practice, if it's in a smaller town or if it's in a bigger city. For me, that is sort of the pro. And also, on a deeper level, I think that counseling psychology gives you the opportunity to really make difference, in the sense that we can destigmatize mental health issues, because counseling psychologists look at people with a specific lens. We believe that people have got strengths and resources, and we are there to mobilize these strengths and resources. We are there to assist them in finding solutions and finding growth in their life's journey. And that is extremely, extremely rewarding, and I think it makes a contribution to mental health in general. I think for many of you, it might also be interesting to know that it's a community-focused type of career as well. You can choose to do a lot of your work on community level, not working one-on-one with people, but working with groups and making a difference there. For me, that is also a pro. Again, I think as I'm talking, I realize I'm talking about the autonomy to choose where you want to focus your professional skills. The cons are, firstly, if you work in private practice, you get paid for the hours that you work. So you can't take extended holidays. You need to see your practice as a business. At the moment, paid positions as counseling psychologists are limited. There are very few in the Department of Health, but this seems to be changing. Also, many private practices that are established are now employing counseling psychologists. So that's also changing, but be aware that there is quite a possibility that you may not step into a paid position, but you may have to go the route of doing at least some of your work in your own capacity and generate some of your work on your own. So that, to me, are the cons associated with counseling psychology.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's very important for students to know. I definitely didn't know that. Maybe also, if you could kind of mention, what do you wish you would have known before you entered the field of counseling psychology? What is something that you think students should be aware of that maybe isn't spoken about that much, or just something you would have liked to know when you were in the position that the students currently are in?
I think what is really important is to be aware of the fact that it's not easy. It does take an emotional, I wouldn't say toll, it is emotionally taxing to be a counseling psychologist, because you are dealing with people's problems, concerns, adversities on a daily basis. So once you are working in the field, it's extremely important to take care of your own emotional health, emotional well-being, and realize that it's quite easy to become burnt out, as they say. So I think that was something that I sort of underestimated in the beginning. That's something I would have known. Secondly, also is to really know that counselling psychology in South Africa is still at a stage where we need to push the field forward. There's still a lot of work to be done because it's not as strongly established as clinical psychology. But I'm glad about the choice that I made because it resonates with me as a person. So that's one thing. I think this self-care is really important to me, that it's an emotionally taxing career.
Okay. Thank you very much. And then I do think I want to ask, just to kind of shift the focus back onto honors applications. What would you say, I'm not too sure, as far as I'm aware, I don't think you're necessarily involved in choosing who becomes an honor student, but what would you say, what can a student do to kind of stand out in their application? What are you guys actually looking for? Is it just
at the honors level, it's only academic marks. We rank from highest to lowest. So there is what you are doing now in your volunteer work and a Psyche is extremely important for your development as a person, and it can stand you in good stead for any other career and also for your master's applications possibly. But on honors level, due to the large number of applications, we can only consider marks.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that clarification. And then I think the last question is just, is there any other advice you'd like to give to students in general, whether it's about entering the field or just honors applications, anything about that?
I would like to maybe say, let's look at honors applications, and for that field, for that matter, also the master's applications, is to say that we know it's an extremely stressful experience for students. I'd like you all to know we don't take it lightly. But with that being said, I'd like you to take care of yourself and not to let this whole thing run away with you, but do the best that you can, apply everywhere, because it is really difficult to say that everybody who applies from UP at UP will be accommodated, because we work with marks and students from all over the country apply. So really, really make it easier on yourself and apply everywhere. If you don't come in the first time, apply again, because the pool of applicants may look different the next year. The marks, the cutoff points may look different depending on who applies. Eventually, also use this opportunity in your life to develop as a person. Sometimes life happens the way it does and you don't get selected immediately, but a few years later you will see that what you chose to study actually is aligned with what you're doing now. Even if you're not a psychologist, something else may have opened up. But to get to that point, you need to have an open mind, you need to have a balanced look, you need to take care of yourself and see your studies also as a way of personal development and personal becoming the best version of yourself. That would be my advice.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Professor. I think that's all the questions that we have. We just want to thank you again, for taking the time to speak to students. Even from my own personal perspective, this was very helpful, everything that you shared. So thank you very much. Then I think...
Sorry, Tamara, do you want me to stay connected for Q&A, or am I done for now?
If you're able to, that would be great.
Okay. I'll just hang around and do a few things. Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, then we'll move on to our next speaker, which is Miss Anri Vandenberg. You can see some of her qualifications. She is the owner of the Vita Nova Counselling Center, as well as the CEO and founder of the Humanitas Training Center in Pretoria. And she's a specialist wellness counselor registered with ASCHP. You can also see her email on the screen in case you want to ask any further questions. Anri, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Let me just switch my camera on for you as well. Just take my glasses off so that it doesn't shine. Can you guys hear me well?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, good. Guys, thank you so much for inviting me to be a speaker tonight. And just from my side as well, a huge congratulations. I think discussions like these are very, very important. I think there's a huge need for some valuable and accurate information with regards to the field of psychology. I think there's a lot of uncertainty very often from various students, especially with regards to selection processes and so on. So I think it's valuable opportunities that you guys are creating through this. And I really wish you all the best for this initiative going forward as well. Okay, so my name is Anri Vandenberg, and I'm a specialist wellness counselor. I'm not a counselling psychologist. And just to explain to you what that is and what that entails, and then I'll definitely get to that because I know you guys wanted some pros and cons and how I got to where I am today. Vita Nova is a counselling centre that I started 10 years ago, and how that came about is I studied my honours, completed my honours at Tux as well, and got married in 2004, completed my honours in 2005. And because I got married and because honours was very tough for me, I decided to take a bit of a break, and I had this whole idea in mind that masters is going to come. I'm going to apply for masters, and my naive thinking at that point in time was it's a logical step. You do your degree, you do your honours, you do your masters, you're a psychologist, and that's the way that it happens. So I completed my honours and got married and had kids. And I had this whole notion, slowly but surely, starting to realize that masters is not going to happen for me. I'm not going to be able to apply. Not even at that point in time thinking about the application process and the possibilities of not being accepted quickly. For me, it was just a case of I had 2 little ones at home. Am I going to be able to do the internships? Am I going to be able to do all of what is necessary to then become a psychologist? And I had to start grieving the whole idea of becoming a psychologist and having that title behind my name. So for me, it was a bit of a grieving process until a friend of mine spoke to me about counseling. And I said, but what is that? And is that even legit? And is it legal and all of that? And I don't want to waste your time with all of that. But fast forward, the ASCHP is the Association for Supportive Counselors and Holistic Practitioners. It's not the HPCSA. Okay, so it's 2 different bodies. The HPCSA operates in the field of counseling. The ASCHP operates in the field of wellness. Now, it's not a very well-known fact, so there are quite a few questions regarding the ASCHP, but in order for the ASCHP to be government gazetted, and in order for it to have all its designations on the NQF, listed on the NQF as proper occupations in South Africa, the ASCHP and the HPCSA had to go and sit around a table and discuss the options and can these 2 bodies coexist harmoniously. In the end, it was determined that they can, and that's how the 2 different bodies then came about. So the HPCSA was there already, the ASCHP then came about. So their highest designation is Specialist Wellness Counselor, and how you can register with them is with an honours degree in psychology and a minimum of 100 hours of practical counselling experience under supervision and a written board exam. You can register with them. As a person with a degree in psychology, you can also register with them. You need the practical as well. You can also register with them, but as a wellness counselor, not a specialist wellness counselor. I would really advise, because I know that a lot of people go, is honours really worth it? Is it worth it? It is. I really would advise that you apply for your honours and that you keep on applying, like Prof. Guse also said, keep on applying and get that behind your name at the very, very least, because degree and honours degree, 2 very different things. The knowledge, the information gained just is going to equip you so much better. So now the whole idea of a specialist wellness counselor versus psychologist, unfortunately, the sad reality with regards to master's applications is, and we see that every day in our training center, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well, is that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Professor, but if I understand this correctly, and if I understand the process correctly, it takes the average psychology student approximately anywhere between 3 to 5 years to get in for masters. That's on the what is it called? There's a Facebook page called Cognition & Co, where they ask quite a bit of psychology questions related to master's applications and so forth. It is not an easy process. It is an emotional taxing process as well. So I couldn't agree more with the tips on, or the advice given to take care of yourself. Don't let this process define you. Make sure that you utilize this as personal growth opportunities. But the reality is, what do you do within the time frame while you are applying for masters and maybe not getting in? And for a lot of people, they give up because of that. And what the ASCHP and the wellness counseling field then allows for is it opens up an alternative route. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend this as an alternative, as in you don't then have to go and do your masters. In fact, we really do encourage people to continuously apply for their masters, because if that is what you want to do, and if that is the role that you want to play, go for it and continuously do it. But while you're applying, you can also then start counseling as a specialist wellness counselor. The scope of a specialist wellness counselor, very different to the scope of a counseling psychologist, or any psychologist for that matter. It's not the same thing. So go and research, do your research, go and look at the ASCHP's website, go and look at their scope of practice. It's not the same thing. We cannot do psychotherapy. We cannot do assessments. We work very closely in my practice, I work very closely with social workers, registered social workers in the field, as well as clinical psychologists, counseling psychologists, because as counselors, we can screen and we can identify certain things that we feel, okay, this falls without or outside of our scope, and we have to refer them. So I've got a team of people that I work very closely with, psychologists, social workers, as I said, and that team that we have is a very nice, strong, multidisciplinary team. And as I said, we work very closely together with other professionals in the field as well. Because of the huge gap as well between the theoretical aspect of university and the practical application thereof in practice, and that's where your master's practical internship comes in. But as a result of the fact that the specialist wellness counselors can also counsel, we have identified the major gap between theory and practice. And as a result, the Humanitas Counseling, or the Humanitas Training Center came about, where we you have to have an honors degree or a degree in psychology or social work to qualify for our course. And then we have a 4-week training course where we look at the practical application of the theory that you already have within the ASCHP's counseling scope. And we train you in that. And then you've got a 3-month period where you have to do your internship. We've organized internships with various organizations in and around the Pretoria and Johannesburg areas. You do your internships under the supervision, weekly supervision of our social worker, our registered social worker, and you gain some very valuable practical experience under very good guidance from our team as well. Some of our students or our interns then do decide, you know what, I love what I'm doing. I'm registered with a professional body. I can counsel confidently and ethically. And you can definitely go and look at the Vita Nova website. You can go and stalk us on social media if you want to. Vita Nova is our counseling center, and Humanitas is our training center. Go and look at our reviews. Go and look at some of the feedback that we get from the organizations where our students or our interns are involved as well. Some people say, you know what, this is it. I found my passion. I found my purpose. This is what I want to do. I don't want to go and apply for masters. And the ASCHP provides them that opportunity to then counsel as wellness counselors. Just important as well, you cannot call yourself a registered counselor then. That's an HPCSA term. And the last thing that we want to do is to mislead the public in any which way. So if you are registered with the ASCHP, you can say, I'm a specialist wellness counselor registered with the ASCHP. Okay, so it's in your wording that you use, be very clear so that you don't mislead the public. So some people decide that that is what they want to do. They found their passion. They either get brave enough and confident enough to open their own practices then, which they could also do. But the majority and many of our interns do decide to continuously apply for masters. And as I said, we definitely do encourage that. While they are then busy with our course and our internships, they, as I said, gain that valuable experience, they gain the confidence, the personal growth that takes place is immeasurable. And in their next applications for masters, I honestly believe that they stand a better chance then because of that personal growth and that practical experience that they do have. And many, many, many of our people who have then decided to apply for masters again do get in, some don't. Okay, so I do not want to advertise this at all as a guarantee to get into masters, but this is an alternative route while you're waiting or while the year goes past and you didn't get in for masters. This is an alternative route to take. A lot of people, as I said, would ask me, I think I mentioned this already, do I need to have my honors degree to start working? I would definitely encourage it. Yes, you do need to have your honors degree. The pros, or let's look at the cons of wellness counseling versus HPCSA registered. You will not be able to claim from medical aid. Okay, so that is important. You cannot diagnose at all. You can screen. You've got to work within your scope of practice, which is not the same as an HPCSA registered practitioner. But I work with stuff like parental guidance. I work with stuff like marriage counseling. I work with stuff like just people who feel a little bit stuck or difficult decisions and choices that they need to make. The moment that there's a deeper lying issue or something where we do need to refer, you have to. So you have to know when to refer. Ethics, very, very important in this counseling as well. What is within my scope? What is not within my scope? Very important to know. And I think that's where our course also plays a very vital role. Another con is also because the ASCHP is not as well known as the HPCSA. There is a bit of a concern with regards to, is this legit? So that could kind of hinder your confidence. But on the Vita Nova website, there is an article that we've published there that specifically asks the question, can I legally and ethically counsel clients in South Africa without HPCSA registration? And we've put all the information on there for you to have a look at. What is extremely important, and I think regardless of your registration or regardless of the profession that you choose in the end, is that you do get supervision on a regular basis. If you are the only voice in your head and the only kind of feedback that you get with regards to specific cases, if it's just you yourself, by yourself, I would definitely recommend that you do get regular supervision. And if you work in a multidisciplinary team, that's a nice one because people do kind of confidentially discuss situations with their colleagues in a group setting. And also important that your clients, they know that you do that so that that's communicated to them as well. But if it's just you by yourself, you have to, I cannot stress this enough, you have to get regular supervision to make sure that you run an ethically sound, professional service then for your clients. There was something else that I wanted to mention here. Can't remember. Tamron, any specific questions on that before I just look at my notes here, or while I look at my notes?
Maybe something along the lines of, what does a typical day as a specialist wellness counselor look like? What kind of, if you could maybe just expand on what kind of things you deal with, the situations that often come up, anything like that.
Okay, so my day, I work in the mornings. One of the things that really moved me to have my own counseling practice and to work for myself is the autonomy with regards to my time, because I'm a mom as well. I've got 2 young ones at home. My oldest is now grade 9 and my youngest is grade 6. So I really want to be available in the afternoons for them as well. So I work in the mornings from 9 until 1. Usually my day is fully booked. I've got clients on the hour. I do find that if I see more than 5 people a day, it really the emotional draining part of the work for me is quite big. I want to be very certain that I can be emotionally as available and as present for my first client. Similarly, exactly the same capacity, hopefully, available for my last client. So I see 5 clients a day maximum. I find that if I go over that, I do become emotionally fatigued in a sense. So 5 clients is what I see on a daily basis. The stuff that I deal with predominantly is trauma. I did an extended trauma course as well. So I deal with trauma, and then marriage counseling is my bread and butter. That's the big thing. There's a huge need for marriage counseling and good marriage counseling. The things that you deal with there, unfortunately, very often, I almost want to say like 95% of the cases with regards to marriage counseling have third parties involved. So trust, infidelity, cheating, pornography, very often, high conflict, communication skills. And then I do work with parents, which I really, really enjoy. I do workshops for parents as well, like positive discipline, filling my child's emotional tank, parental guidance with regards to our discipline styles or our parenting roles or disciplinary roles that we take in. So very informative kind of sessions as well when it comes to parenting. Often they've got questions like, is it normal for a 2-year-old to throw a tantrum? And what do I do with a 2-year-old? So we problem solve together, and it's a lot of education that goes on in those sessions as well. Trauma counseling is tough. Again, you've got to be very sure and very certain when to refer and when this is beyond your scope. Very often in trauma counseling, what I find is that if we share our stories with other people, let's say we have a conversation and I share an event that happened or an incident that happened, we very often hijack each other's stories. Like I would say something like, oh, you wouldn't believe what happened. I was in a hijacking last week and this and this and this happened. And somebody would say, oh, the same thing happened to me. And we kind of hijack each other's stories. So what I found especially with trauma is that often the people who end up in my counseling room have not had the opportunity to tell their story without interruption or without it being hijacked or without it being made about somebody else or without upsetting people to such an extent that they feel prohibited from sharing even further. So trauma counseling is tough, it's emotionally quite draining, but that's very fulfilling because and marriage counseling as well, if you can see the marriage or the relationship progressing. But trauma counseling, if you can see the relief, you can physically see the relief after they've spoken about it, just holding the space for somebody while they actually retell the incident or talk you through it. Very rewarding, but then again, very, very cognizant of when to refer and when this is beyond your scope. So parenting, trauma, marriage counseling. What else? I know that there are some counselors also in our counseling practice. We've got a specialist wellness counselor who works under the supervision of our registered social worker, and she specifically works with teenagers. And I think there's a huge need for people who, I don't want to say exclusively, but who really focus on teenagers and helping them just navigate life successfully. I think it's an age group that's a little bit neglected. A lot of people focus on play therapy and small kids, and a lot of people focus on adults, but it's this in-between age that's kind of neglected. And I think also life is changing. They are struggling. They're struggling with school. They're struggling with peer pressure, with identity, with a lot of stuff. And not a lot of, or we found that not a lot of practitioners, not don't want to say are brave enough, it's not fair to say brave enough, or feel that this is an area where they really want to work with, because teenagers are like, it's a little bit of a different species sometimes. So Alicia Kurtze, who works for Vitanova under Anshul Peterson and Dr. Peter Schultz's supervision and guidance, really does amazing work there. So you can also choose your area that you want to focus on in counseling as well. Any other questions on that, Tamara?
I don't think so. I'm not too sure if there's anything you'd like to add. We are running out of time, and we do still need to speak to the students about their perspective. So if you could maybe just some closing remarks, that would be great.
Okay, perfect. In closing, I think go for the psychology route. Go for it full out and all guns blazing. Apply for your honors. Apply for your masters. Continuously do so. It's worth it if you can. If you can't do that, or if that is not viable financially, or if that is something that is taking a bit of or too much of an emotional toll, keep in mind that the ASCHP is there, and that it is an alternative route. And if you are looking for, in my opinion, good quality training with regards to that, and people who will not just like a Volch machine stuff you in and push you out on the other side, really aimed at building relationships with our interns and providing that guidance, that mentorship and the supervision along the way, have a look at our website, humanitas.co.za. And you're welcome to send me any questions or anything via email, or even on my WhatsApp. I see my number's not there, but you're welcome to. I can quickly give it 082 541 4357. 082 541 4357.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So just to kind of clarify for everyone, that was also a bit of a different perspective and experience, just so that you guys are presented with different options of, how you can actually get where you want to get. So thank you, Anri, very much. We really appreciate it. I will quickly, we now have the student perspective. Just so if Cameron could maybe go first, just sharing a quick, summary of your journey, your experience applying for honors, how it was for you, and also any advice you have for students. And then Cayla can do the same. I'm not too sure if you can hear me, Cameron.
Oh, no, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, awesome. All right, thank you. I feel honored to be one of your lovely speakers tonight, so thanks for that. As you can see, I don't have a nice picture there, but you can all just imagine that I'm really pretty. So with my undergraduate, I did it here at Tux, and I triple majored, which is kind of something that I think was actually really, really important, especially for me now. Not necessarily just triple majoring, but it was what I triple majored in. So I did anthropology, criminology, and psychology in my third year. And I actually didn't want to do anthropology at all after my first year, but I kept on doing it for some reason. And it was only in my third year that I actually started to acknowledge its value. And part of that value was just how much it made me practice essay writing. Other than the fact that, it gave me like these diverse perspectives and et cetera, but just essay writing is kind of what I want to focus on right now. I find that a lot of students, I think in my experience, they tended to drop essay writing modules in their first year or after their first year, or after the second year. And I think like a lot of people tend to dual major in criminology and psychology. And like, I personally don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that there's a reason why it's so common. I also think that it's really, really important for people to consider just sticking with essay writing subjects, even if it's difficult, especially if it's difficult. And the reason for that is because when you get to honors level, you tend to write a lot, and like it's a lot, guys. And it's not a bad thing, and I'm sure you can pick it up in honors if you didn't take it in undergrad. But I'd recommend considering it if you have the opportunity still to kind of do that, because it can really, really, really help you. On the note of, I think, let's just say on the note of anthropology then, it also kind of shaped my I guess my picking of counseling psychology in general. Prior to even like the beginning of this year, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I was kind of considering neuropsychology or clinical psychology. I think a lot of people consider clinical psychology. Counseling psychology wasn't really on the table. It was only at the end of my third year in anthropology that I started to think more about growth as a concept. That was basically what we were covering. We were talking about, letting people tell their own stories. And I found that was something that I really, really wanted to do with my life. And I know counseling psychology has this, I think, a specific kind of aspect to it, where it gives people kind of a space to tell their own stories. And that's something that we've already covered in this session. We've spoken about things like how people often hijack stories. I think also in the country that we live in at the moment, there's not a lot of spaces like these that are safe for people to kind of just, give themselves this time to just grow. And I think that that's extremely important. And I didn't even know that this was something that had to do with counseling psychology. I was kind of not very clued up on it until recently. And then when I found it, I was like, oh, this is perfect. So I thought that would just be something that was really important to mention when it came to me kind of choosing counseling psychology. But at the same time, it is also kind of like pointing out the fact that you don't really need to know what you want to do. I think that a lot of people in undergrad put an extreme amount of pressure on themselves to know where they're going with psychology, whether or not they're going to go into masters, what kind of masters they're going to go into, and why. And I remember even in my first year, there would be like practically strangers just asking me what kind of psychology I want to go into, and props to them and everything. But at the same time, I was thinking to myself, I'm in first year. I don't know what I want to do yet. And I think that's a really fair place to be in for a lot of people. I don't think many people in general know where they want to be. So if any of you don't know exactly where you're going, I think that's perfectly fine. And I think if it comes to a time where you have to make a decision, you'll make the decision that you need to make. Sorry, I don't want to sound too mushy. And then I wanted to say specifically where I wanted to apply and where I applied and et cetera, in my third year. I did apply to, I think, 4 or 5 universities. I applied to UCT, UNISA, Tux, I think FITS, and I think it was SACAP or in Varsity College. So I wanted to kind of make sure that I'd go into honors, but at the same time, I thought to myself, if I don't get in, I'm just going to do anthropology honors anyway. But so I'm glad that I actually got in. But I found that a lot of my friends actually didn't get in, and that was a real shame because they were very, very disappointed. Not only just like in the situation, but also in themselves. And that was something that I found kind of sad. And that was actually because I do kind of have the opinion that you're a lot more than the university that you study at. I mean, I don't believe that it's the institution that makes you a good psychologist, or not just the institution, but it's just you. I mean, if you think about Prof. Guse, who spoke earlier, I mean, she said she went to NWU. It's not there's nothing wrong with NWU. But what I'm trying to say is, she didn't study at Tux. You can study wherever, and you can still end up the HOD at Tux University if Prof. Guse is any example for us. So don't feel too bad, because I know that a lot of my friends who didn't get in, who went to go study at different universities, or who are taking a gap year would be phenomenal psychologists when and if they have the opportunity to get into masters, etc., if they decide to. And I think that's really important for you guys to keep in mind. Okay, but I'm running out of time here, and I really don't want to like step on Cayla's toes. So I feel like I've given you some inkling of how I've, approached everything. I wish I could give you a bit more, but yeah, is that good for you?
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Everyone?
No, I think that was very helpful. Thank you. So we have gone over time, guys. For those of you that need to go, that's okay, but we are recording the session, so you can always come back to watch it later. But we'll do, Cayla, if you're here, if you can give your experience, and then we'll move into questions.
Hello, guys. I hope everybody's well, and I just want to check you guys can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So I did make a presentation, but it's on Canva and it's not allowing me to share it. So I'm just gonna talk through and hopefully you guys can get an idea of what I'm trying to say. So I just want to say, first of all, congratulations for you guys. Going to university and wanting to continue and further your studies is a huge thing. And I don't think we give ourselves enough credit for the achievements and the little achievements that we do. So tap yourself on the back and be proud of yourself, because it isn't easy. And every day, especially, at a really good university like Turks, the standards are very high. So we really do want the best for our students, and I think we perform really well. So well done to you guys on that. So I did my BA through Turks. I did it in criminology and psychology, and basically it was really amazing. And I agree with what Cam was saying with the whole essay writing thing. I took sociology until third year, until I couldn't take it anymore, because it isn't the easiest subject in the world. But the essay writing is something that they do not tell you need for honors, but it is extremely important. We do a lot of presentations, a lot of group work. So if you don't like doing group work, it's something that you need to get comfortable with, because I believe it's an extremely important skill. It's not always easy working with different people who all want to be leaders and stuff like that. But it is beneficial, the group work. And then we do a lot of presentations. So unfortunately, because honors is still online right now, we were supposed to have our health psychology module in person, but unfortunately that didn't happen. So everything's still online. So all the presentations that we have to do is on either Google Meet, or we use Canva, or we use PowerPoint. I personally love Canva, so I would start getting used to making presentations and stuff like that, as well as working in a group. When they say honors is difficult, they are not lying to you. I applied to relatively the same universities that Cam did. The only ones that I was interested in was SACAP, Turks, and UCT were the ones that I was really interested in. And I ended up getting offered to all of them, but because, Turks of Nuks, it was kind of like a very easy decision, because I was quite nervous that Turks wasn't going to obviously send me an offer, but they did, thank goodness. And it was good. So SACAP's also really good, and UCT's program, from what I've heard from peers and stuff, is amazing. Even when we're looking at master's applications and such like that, it's a really good program that they have as well. SACAP's a little pricey, so it's like 90,000 Rand a year. And that's like excluding like your textbooks and stuff like that, because it's quite a small and private university. So if you have that opportunity and your parents will allow you to do that, then definitely apply to SACAP, but it is a little bit expensive. Okay, so what I wanted to actually speak about is in terms of counseling psychology and just honor psychology in general. You've got like your 3 core modules, your elective, so that's your research module, your research methodologies, and your theories and paradigms. So they're all quite difficult, but they're quite enjoyable, and your lecturers are really amazing, and it's 1 lecture per day for 2 hours. And then you've got you get to choose 4 electives. So what I've chosen is neuropsychology, neuropsychology, psychological assessment, what else? Health psychology and psychopathology. Psychopathology is extremely interesting. It is so cool. It's all your abnormal behavior and your DSM-5 criteria. It's really great. And then the others is like therapeutic psychology and community psychology and stuff like that, which is really good if you want to go into the counseling field. And then I just wanted to talk about working while doing your honors, because I don't think it's something that necessarily gets spoken about before I end off. So I've done part-time work since my first year. So I've been an IEB tutor since my first year in 2019. And then I also started au pairing and doing some admin work for the SAB. And I've continued with things like that, like small admin work and au pairing and tutoring. And yes, they do say that it's not recommended to work in a full-time course with honors. Trust me, it's difficult. But if you are in a position where you need to work or you need to have that extra income coming in and stuff like that, then I definitely do think the main thing you need to learn is time management. Because honors gets extremely busy. Have multiple planners. Even for third year, you need to have like multiple planners, like on your phone, on your computer, on your like a written diary, a daily diary, those types of things, because that's extremely important. Because you don't want to miss out any assignments or anything like that. And another thing is try get weekend work. If you look at maybe Au Pair Extraordinaire or EduCore Solutions, or even just jobs online for students that's part-time, like hostessing or anything like that. You know, you're not making a huge amount of cash, but it can be on the weekends for like 3 hours max. Like that's majority of the work I do. And it does work with your schedule if you know how to plan it well. So it's not impossible, but I do think you have to have those personality traits. You need to be organized and you need to be willing to work. I think don't come into honors if you're not willing to be challenged every single day with group work, with your lecturers, your supervisors, because it's not as easy as, you know, undergraduate is. Obviously it's not. And you need to be able to roll with the punches, I think. So yeah, but other than that, I think Tux is an amazing university to do your postgraduate through. The lecturers are amazing and they really do look after you. So yeah, best of luck to you guys, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Cayla. We really appreciate it. Okay, awesome. So everyone, that's all the speakers for this evening. I don't know if anyone has any questions. You can pop it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask. I do see someone has asked if they can you just clarify whose email address you would like? The last speaker, which is Cayla, or one of the previous speakers? Maybe just let us know about that. But yeah, any questions, anyone, before we conclude? Okay, Cayla, one of the students would like your email, so I don't know if you're comfortable sharing that in the chat.
Yeah, I'll just pop it in the chat. Where do you find the chat on this Teams thing?
On the side. There's a little like chat box thing. Okay, so Professor, a student has asked, how many Tux students do you admit for honors? What's the quota? And how important is it to do your PhD?
Thanks, Tamron. We don't have a quota for Tux students. We simply look at all the applications together and then we start to rank from the top down. And every year it differs how many we take in, but it can differ. It can alternate between 50 and 60. In terms of the PhD, that's why I've got my glasses on. It depends on what you want to do career-wise. If you've got an academic career in mind, like I changed from practice to academia, PhD is extremely important. You will not easily get an appointment as a lecturer nowadays if you don't have a PhD or you're almost concluded your studies.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Any other questions, guys? And you can ask any of the speakers who spoke. Ooh, Sandy, can you hear me a bit better now? Can you guys hear me?
So from my side, I don't know if it's my connection, but it's very like you're breaking up a lot. I don't know if that's just me.
Someone just indicated.
Cameron, can you hear me?
Okay, is it a bit better now?
Yes. There we go.
Hey guys, load shedding makes everyone's lives more difficult. Okay, yeah. Does anyone have any last questions that they want to ask? You guys always can either email the Psyche Society or any of the speakers that were shown. Their email addresses were put up on the screen. Again, this presentation will be shared to you via email, and you will be sent the link for the YouTube video as well if you want to rewatch this and just kind of clarify a few points or note things down. Okay. For the honor students, how do you know which modules to take for which type of psychology in math?
So I'm just going to answer it, I think, because I don't know where Cam is. But what we basically found out during our honors is that any of the modules that TICS offers you, and this is why I'm saying TICS's program is so good, is any of the modules that you decide gives you an holistic view of what to expect in masters. So whether you decide to go into research, neuropsychology, clinical psychology, counseling psychology, the modules that any one of the electives that you choose, and obviously the core modules that they have, gives you a holistic approach to what to expect for masters. Because remember, with masters, you're going to do your practical, your learning, and then your internship and stuff like that. So it doesn't matter. You must go off what you're interested in, because if you read the descriptions and you're like, okay, cool, like therapeutic psychology sounds really awesome, I'm going to do that. Do it out of your interest, because I think that's the best way for you to learn and find your passion. Like, for example, I was stuck between health psychology and therapeutic psychology. And health psychology, the brief just seemed like it was so much more interesting, and it was something that I wanted to do. So I tossed a coin and I chose that one. So I think it's literally, how you feel. What can we do with psychology undergraduate degree in a sense that somebody isn't taken for honors? I'm not sure I can answer that question. Hopefully somebody else can answer it better.
Professor, do you perhaps know the answer to that question, or Anri?
That is the age-old question. And I think Anri, if I can remember her name correctly, will also come in here. I think what's important is to think of psychology beyond therapy. Think of where can you apply your knowledge of people in the workplace. Could it be that you can work, like, for example, in an advertising agency? Could it be that you can work in human resources? So you need to think wider, and that will then be influenced by your your other majors. But if you are really interested then in the therapeutic or counseling side, then one avenue would be the wellness counselor. So that's basically what I would suggest. But I always say to people, remember, psychology does not equal therapy. Psychology helps you to understand people, understand yourself, and go into the workplace, whatever it may be, with a very strong sense of self and understanding of the human condition.
Just from my side, I completely agree. Nothing that you've studied up to now is a waste. And I think it's very, very important that you don't view the only end goal as becoming a psychologist. Psychology is a very important foundation for life. So and for managing your own life and for navigating the world around you. So it's a benefit, regardless of whether you get in for honors, regardless of whether you get in for masters. Nothing that you've done up to now has been wasted, and I think it's important to kind of start getting that mindset as well.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any last questions? We'll probably just take about one more, and then we do need to wrap up because we have gone quite a bit over time. Any questions, anyone? Okay, I think I'm going to take the silence as a no. So just to conclude, once again, I'd firstly like to extend a very big thank you from Psyche and from myself to our speakers. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to students. I do know we are generally starved for information, so pretty much anything and everything you've said has been very helpful. And we really do appreciate it, and hopefully it will, help the students who have attended and any students who will be listening or watching this to kind of figure out where they want to go. So I really do want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to speak and for offering all of your different perspectives. I do think it was very helpful, very beneficial. And I would also like to thank everyone who attended as well. And I hope you guys found it interesting and informative and that things are a bit clearer in your mind now. But if there's no other questions, then thank you all very much for coming, and I will stop the recording now.
Thank you so much for your effort and your time.
Thank you very much for having me here as well. I really